Hello. Have you ever felt excited, bored, terrified, anxious, blissful, all in the same day? I have, the day my daughter was born. Welcoming your child into this world has the ability to evoke all these emotions and more. Today, I want to revisit this very special time in my life and share the story of my labor and delivery with you. First, I would like to share a few details about my pregnancy. I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and at 38 weeks, the doctors predicted that my daughter was going to weigh about 10 pounds. These facts led the doctors to decide to induce my labor. On July 31st, 2010, I reported to Naval Center Portsmouth to the Labor and Delivery Unit. I had to wait for a bed to become available. After about an hour or so, I was admitted. Upon admittance, I was hooked up to the fetal monitor, a contraction monitor, had my vital signs read, and got an IV. Talk about nerve-wracking. Eventually, I made it to my own room and got settled into bed. A nurse came into my room and started Pitocin. This is the drug that helps to induce your labor. The contractions started. Man, did they hurt. My husband, my mom, and my in-laws and I played cards as we waited for the progression of the labor. Soon my contractions became uncomfortable, and I asked the nurse for something to control the pain. When the medications kicked in, I decided to take advantage of the downtime and the relaxation and rest. While I was sleeping, the nurse came into my room and increased the dose of Pitocin that she was giving me. This is as per policy. Everything was going great. Who could have predicted what would happen next? The monitor alarm started beeping, and the nurse rushed into my aid. Olivia's heart rate had dropped. In an effort to increase her heart rate, they applied an oxygen mask to my face and turned me onto my left side. They were successful, and labor again started progressing normally. Things calmed down. The pain for the contraction started to get so intense that I requested my epidural. The doctor explained the procedure to me and then showed me the needle. Oh my gosh, that thing was huge. Talk about a frightening and nervousness. That needle was so big. Finally, after about what seemed like hours, the epidural was in place, and I could no longer feel anything. After the epidural, I was ready. I wanted to meet my daughter. The nurse again came in. She increased the Pitocin. As I finally started to drift off asleep again, the monitors began to beep. Again, the nurses turned me on my left side, applied oxygen to my face, and finally Olivia's heart rate returned to normal. Due to her failing heart rate for the second time, I was faced with a crucial decision. The doctors came into my room and informed me that I had a choice to make. I could either labor for 2 more hours with an unknown outcome, or I can elect to go ahead and do a C-section. That way, in theory, I could prevent an emergency C-section. They explained the risks associated and prepared me and my husband to make an informed decision. To decrease the amount of stress that was put on me and Olivia, my husband and I agreed that C-section was the answer. Again, the doctors had to come in and explain the risks associated, and they prepared us for the delivery room. My husband put on scrubs and looked like a doctor that was going into the operating room, and I can remember the feeling of nauseousness as they wheeled me into the OR. It was so cold in there. The staff pulled me onto the cold operating table and began surgery. As they cut, I can remember asking, "Where's my husband?" Without even flinching, I turned to look, and he was there. My husband stood next to my head, looking over the curtain as they cut into my stomach. I remember hearing the doctor say that I was going to feel a lot of pressure, but all I felt was relief as they pulled my daughter out of me. It took a minute or so for her to cry, and I started freaking out. And then the most beautiful sound I ever heard filled the room. On August 1st, 2010, at 1:14 p.m., an 8-pound, 14-ounce, 20.5-inch little girl was born. My husband brought her to me and let me look into her eyes. And since I had the C-section, I couldn't hold her right away, but tears flooded down my face. After the C-section, I was stitched up. Olivia and Dan, my husband, left the room. I was taken to recovery, where I recovered for about a half hour before I was wheeled to my room and finally able to hold my little girl in my arms. She was so beautiful. The birth of a child is a very exciting and stressful time for any parent. But the day my daughter was born, I will never forget. It filled me with so many emotions in just a 24-hour period. It was unreal. Thank you very much for listening to my story.